Hello, YouTubers! Do you want to know how to make $1 million live streaming? Well, I'm here to tell you. The first step is move to China. The second step is find a multimillionaire who can back your live streaming plan. This is basically the lesson that I learned from a recent documentary that I watched. It's called The People's Republic of Desire. It was really interesting as a way of seeing what live streaming culture might look like in the future, in some sense, because the live streaming culture in China is significantly more advanced than it is here. So basically, it gave me a lot of insights and possible hypotheses about how to understand the larger political economy of live streaming, and even generated some possible kind of strategic insights, possibly, for how people such as myself and anyone out there who also makes videos or does live streaming might be able to up their game and perhaps get ahead of certain technological and political economic curves that might be coming down the pike. So this video is going to be one part film review and then one part me extracting insights and hypotheses and perhaps ridiculous speculations about the future of live streaming in America based on what we know about what's going on in live streaming culture in China. When you first start watching the movie, the impression that you get from this film is that in China, live streaming is thriving and extremely lucrative. You meet a few more or less professional live streamers, is the impression that you get, and these live streamers are regularly making thousands of dollars in their live streams doing almost nothing. It seems that the popular genres are pretty Chinese women singing tunes. Their voices aren't especially good, but for some reason there's a major demand for this type of content. And the man who's featured in the documentary is mostly just kind of yelling into the live stream. It's kind of like a Chinese version of a kind of like Alex Jones kind of raw intensity. Obviously, they're not there for the singing skills, but he kind of sings in a ridiculous voice and then kind of just yells aggressive things at his listeners. So these are the main genres that you're introduced to at the very beginning of the film. And so you get the impression that live streaming is all over the place, very popular and widespread, not a kind of very fringe niche phenomena as it is in the US. So at first you're like, wow, this is awesome. If you want to be a live streamer, you should move to China. They're making mad money. But then as the story unfolds, what's interesting is that it doesn't really seem that live streaming is much more attractive or better to do in China. It's not a better place to be a live streamer necessarily. But because the culture is more advanced and it's more developed, what's really going on, you learn, is that the live streaming culture or live streaming industry is just way more capitalized. It's way more competitive. So there is more money to be had, but it's kind of a glimpse of what live streaming, I think, in the United States could or will become as it becomes more popular. And although it seems like it's more lucrative, in a lot of ways it's not, because basic economics is that the more lucrative an industry or sector is at first, the more people will pour into it. And then ultimately, the more competition there is, the more likely profits tend to converge towards zero, essentially. And so that's kind of what's going on in China. It's very exciting and thriving live streaming culture where people are making thousands, but precisely because of that, it's essentially a big business and it's an increasingly brutal way to try to make money. So what happens in China is that every year they have this one big annual competition that it's kind of like the Super Bowl or something like that. It's kind of used as a way of sorting the best live streamers from the rest and determining like which are going to be the huge money makers of the following year. And so because it's so important, the best live streamers or the live streamers who have some chance at doing well get major financial backers to basically support their work. But it's kind of interesting and strange how it works because, as you know from like my live stream or the average YouTuber's live stream, fans or people who like to watch the show are the ones who throw some money to the live streamer. But what happens in China is that fans who have the most money realize that by giving tons of money to their favorite live streamer, that this is going to create buzz and hype around that live streamer, and that this is going to then drive future donations and payments to that live streamer. So what happens is that the most loyal and wealthy fans of a particular live streamer set up their own agencies where they then hire the live streamer to basically work for their agency. And then they get a cut of everything that the live streamer makes. So why do I find this interesting from our perspective in the West? Well, I think it stands to reason that what's been going on in China possibly foretells what is going to happen to live streaming culture in the US as it develops. And of course, it might develop with more Western or American characteristics, but I think there's every reason to expect, because live streaming is increasingly profitable, at least to some degree, I think it's reasonable to expect that the situation you're finding in China right now will in some way or another come to Western live streaming. And so I thought it would be interesting to reflect on what we might be able to learn from this. And one thing that I think struck me very clearly from watching this documentary is that in some sense, right now in the West, we're actually enjoying quite a sweet little moment in the live streaming and YouTube culture where it's not yet so fully capitalized. It's not yet so brutal. In the documentary, the live streamers that we're introduced to, they are making a lot of money on their live streaming platform. The big platform in China is called YY. And we're introduced to people who are making a lot of money, much more than I'm making. However, they're also susceptible to losing everything, losing all of their status and income through these increasingly brutal competitive games. So for instance, the one guy that we are introduced to, I believe his name was Big Lee, if I'm pronouncing it correctly. He is at one point making tons of money, but to keep up with this hyper-competitive industry, he has to invest his own money into basically paying donations to himself to keep his numbers up, because that's what drives future numbers. And so he has to basically go all in with his savings on his future earnings. And so this is just kind of crazy and insane, and something that fortunately we in the West right now don't have to do. We can, just as dilettantes and dabblers and, neophyte live stream experimenters, make a decent bit of money by having an interesting and entertaining live stream without any of these problems yet. So that's one insight that came to me, which is kind of interesting and worth reflecting on, that actually right now we might be grateful and happy that live streaming is not as hyper capitalized as it is in China. But also, I think what's really ultimately most interesting and powerful about looking at the live streaming situation in China is recognizing that if this type of hyper-competitive, capitalized live streaming is inevitably coming to Western live streaming, as it probably is through the ineluctable dynamics of global competition, then you all who might be experimenting with live streaming in your living room better get way more fucking serious about it. And we should all start thinking about how we can get ahead of this curve. So already this movie was giving me all these interesting ideas about, oh shit, like maybe I should be starting an agency. Maybe I should be talking to people with money. I could ask rich people to give me huge amounts of live stream money, pay them back a cut of it. But then from the hype that I get from those people giving me money, it'll grow my channel, and then more people, it'll naturalize other people giving me money. It'll normalize people giving me money. It'll increase the reference point in the mind of other potential live stream donors about what is a reasonable amount of money to give. Nowadays in the West, anyone listening to this is going to think this type of strategy or scheming sounds just utterly manipulative and exploitative. But if this is the competitive reality that's coming to Western live streaming, if Neo-China arrives from the future, as it were, then, well, this might just be a necessary type of experimentation that we all have to do now if we want to survive the coming capitalistic storm of hyper-competitive live streaming. So basically, this is kind of an extended pitch to anyone out there. If you have a lot of money, talk to me, send me a message, because maybe we can cooperate where you make an agreement to give me $1,000 every live stream, right? But that will be written about in news articles. People will be like, holy shit, man, Justin Murphy's blowing up. For some reason, he's got people giving him thousands of dollars all of a sudden. That'll get written up, then more people will come, give me money, and I'll pay you all that $1,000 back in the long run. What do you think? That's my pitch. Watch this film. It was a really good film. I thought it was very interesting. And so this is a generally positive review of the film, by the way. I think you should watch it. I think it's worth watching, especially if you're interested in internet culture. So I would give it a Justin Murphy 8 stars out of 10, let's say, is the film review portion of this live stream. Watch it. Let me know if you're convinced that this is where the future of live streaming is going. And if so, let's make some moves now while all the Western live streamers are still, capitalistically incompetent and not sufficiently, prepared for what's coming. Let's make it happen. Get in touch, get your millionaire backers, have them message my people. We'll do lunch, and we will bootstrap my live stream into a hyper-capitalized entity making millions of dollars a year. You will also be making thousands of dollars on that millions of dollars that I'll be making. And we'll take the world by storm. So this is also an investor pitch. Basically, I tried to sell this as a clickbaity title, teaching you how to make $1 million, but it's actually about how to make me $1 million. So thank you for being a guinea pig. And as I said, if you have $1 million, get in touch. If you don't get in touch, because I'd rather not talk with people unless they have millions of dollars. And I'm just kind of busy. So thank you.